Educational Communications and this station present Environmental Directions with Nancy Pearlman. On this series, we explore the effects of human influence on the Earth's ecosystems and discuss solutions to environmental problems which affect the quality of life on this planet. Environmental Directions gives you the kind of information you need to help you participate in decisions impacting your community, the nation, and the world. Now, here's your host, Nancy Pearlman.
Hello. We're going to be talking about STEM education with my guest, Dr. Chris Goldberg. He is a student teacher, coach, supervisor at Temple University's Education Department in Philadelphia. He is a children's book author on STEM and diversity with his newest book, Aliyah and the Sensational Problem Solvers, What's Cooking. He is also founder, CEO, and editor of Lacrosse Media. He has been a former STEM and computer science teacher from grades K through 8, and he was a journalist with the Philadelphia Inquirer. Welcome. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
It's fantastic to be here. Thank you so much, Nancy.
First, tell us what STEM stands for, because I know that some people are now using STEAM, and what does that stand for as opposed to STEM?
Science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And if you add the A, it's also art. The thing is that STEM is more of a concept. It's a way of thinking, and it's an interdisciplinary, a problem-solving way, a creative way, a fix-the-world way. If I say I taught STEM and computer science, hopefully I taught all subjects because that was the goal.
And you have received the Philadelphia Eagles Exalta All-Pro STEM Teacher Award in 2019.
Yes, that was quite an honor. They picked 10 through nominations, finalists for STEM Teacher of the Year in the Tri-County area, which is southeastern Pennsylvania, northern Delaware, and South Jersey. They did pick an eventual winner, too, but all of us got treated as really fantastically. Went to an Eagles game and had a big banquet and spoke about things that we're all doing in our schools. So it was quite an experience. Fantastic.
You also received other awards, such as the Educator 500 Award from Westchester University. You have presented about STEM at many conferences, and you have been involved in teaching the engineering design process with recyclable materials, and it was named a featured participant educator in 2017. You raised a lot of money through a community technology recycling program with Funding Factory. What was that about?
In the early 2000s, a lot of schools really started a pitch to recycle ink cartridges and cell phones. Unfortunately now, the old cell phone, if people remember from the early 2000s, now we have smartphones, so nobody recycles them because they're worth too much money. But we would recycle, we would get the word out to everybody in the community about recycling the phones, and then ink cartridges as well. We were able to really get businesses involved too, so we did raise a good amount of money, all went to our technology program and hopefully taught students something. And then I was lucky that this big company, the Funding Factory, honored us.
You use the educational approach with your students to tackle real problems. You want them to be problem solvers. You actually were very involved in researching the illnesses and cancer among students from your elementary school because it was located about a block from a landfill. The United States Environmental Protection Agency said that wasn't a problem, but you think that it really was?
I don't know. All I wanted to do when I did get involved, twice we really looked at this in our school. Really a lot of it was teachers had some illnesses and students had some illnesses, and actually the surrounding community, someone had started a Facebook page and there had been a lot of illnesses. So my only thing was, let's learn as much as we can, and if there are any hazards, then they can be addressed. There are times, we've seen this over history, if somebody doesn't speak up and somebody doesn't at least push for testing to see if there are, then it may go undetected, number one. And number two, a lot of staff members were concerned about it. We don't need teachers to be worrying about anything but teaching students. And there's been more testing. I think a lot of people are aware, and raising awareness is the key.
Back in the 1980s, I did one of the first television program documentaries about an elementary school that used the concept of environment in all aspects of its teaching, not just the sciences, but the social studies, the English, the arts, they did all sorts of different ecological projects. What do you think elementary schools and middle schools should be doing to incorporate more environmental issues into their curriculum?
I did some extra research on this because it's such an important question. Last year I had the privilege of teaching kindergarten every day because of the pandemic, my last year of teaching in public schools, and working with younger students. And I had worked with even pre-K, and I had always worked with students in grades 1 through 8. If you can incorporate education through STEM that involves the environment, almost has to now because it's such an issue, and STEM addresses ways we can problem solve to make the world better. And let's face it, everywhere you go, there's something in the environment that's an issue right now. And if you can teach students at a young age to be aware of what's going on and give them hands-on activities, science-related, math-related, even technology-related, that can bring awareness and help them begin to solve these problems at a younger age, they're much more apt to continue that. They are so receptive at the younger age. I taught kindergarten last year, and I was more successful than teaching middle school students. And I was amazed at them. And the teachers and my principal would see how I was reacting, like, this is your calling. They should have been a kindergarten teacher. Well, STEM, you're not going to be a full-time STEM kindergarten teacher. But the way younger students take in information, there are no boundaries, and it really is exciting. Just to add to this, I did look up the history of National STEM Day. It's November 8th every year. And it was only created 15 years ago, and it was because our country was found that we were so far behind in other leading countries in science and technology and math and in the STEM area of education, that we were falling so far behind that they created National STEM Day because educators were seeing that our science skills were not moving forward as other skills. You see that, and working with youngsters in an area where it's not high socioeconomic with a lot of diversity. Now as a student teacher for Temple, student teacher coach, I see so many areas where it's clear that we need to teach this. We need to get more educated on how to teach it. And we see so many benefits for starting it at a younger age.
While physical education and outdoor sports isn't considered an environmental issue per se, I see it as very related because as a runner, I could tell when Los Angeles had lousy air quality, it made a difference where I ran. When I hike and backpack, I couldn't stand seeing the litter that people would leave and how that litter could cause problems for wildlife. Also, by people taking care of their health individually, they're more aware of the environmental factors such as pollution and toxics that may be affecting them. The sport that you chose is lacrosse. What is that? It's not too common in the United States.
I covered lacrosse as a sports writer before I became a teacher, and then when I became a teacher, my inner city school where I taught at in the city of Coatesville outside of Philadelphia was trying to start a middle school girls lacrosse program, and nobody would take the job, and I kind of liked the sport even though I never played it, so I started the program there and ended up coaching another 15 years in my next school. It's an incredible sport. It's growing all over the country.
But people run around on a field with some sort of pole that catches the ball and they throw it?
Stick. This game was created by the Native Americans from northern New York and into Canada. It's a homegrown sport, probably the most homegrown sport in this country. It used to only be played mostly by some of the prep schools, but now it's played by everybody. We're spreading it very much in all areas from all cultures, and it's an incredible sport, and it's a running sport. You got to run. Young girls and young boys learn so much about themselves and about exactly what you're talking about. I love it. And I even was able to combine some community service projects with our teams, too. I coached girls soccer as well, girls soccer and girls lacrosse. And they're tremendous sports in learning how to be an athlete, a teammate, and then, yes, appreciating physical fitness and the environment.
With your book about STEM, you were working in conjunction with the family of Gladys West, who's 91. She finally has been recognized as the leader of the team that developed the model for what is now GPS, Global Positioning System, which so many people depend upon. Can you explain how women did so many incredible inventions that weren't given credit to them?
Yeah, it's an amazing story. I think a lot of people are aware now of the Hidden Figures book, and then a movie came out. Katherine Johnson's probably the most well-known of African-American women that really got us into space through their incredible skills in mathematics and calculating. They were called computers. They were actually human computers. We didn't even get into space. John Glenn wouldn't go unless Katherine Johnson was doing the calculations. And it was only 5-6 years ago that they were recognized for what they accomplished. Dr. Gladys West, a somewhat similar situation, was not recognized. She was hired by basically the Navy Proving Grounds in the 50s and worked for almost 40 years, and in the 70s and 80s developed exactly that, the model using the space satellites, what has become the GPS. People knew that's a thing. People knew about it, but nobody said anything about it or recognized her until 4 years ago when she actually wrote a small snippet about it to her sorority, and somebody said, wait a minute, look who made the GPS, and look how important the GPS is today for everything, environmentally as well. Incredible amounts of information that help us with the environment. 4 years ago, she was inducted into the Pentagon Hall of Fame. She's just starting to get recognized, and when I decided to write a book, which is towards the end of my teaching career, on STEM, I wanted to focus on a minority student, so it's really the star is a 9-year-old black girl, and she has 2 team members, and they have a major challenge, and I wanted to have her have a inspiration, and it ended up when I searched and searched, I wanted to find someone who had accomplished something that was so great that nobody really knew about. So I found that Gladys West had accomplished more. She also got a PhD in her 70s, really incredible. And then I realized or learned that she's still alive. I sought out her family and have been communicating with her daughter, who's also a PhD. And Dr. Gladys West wrote the foreword for the book. And the elementary school in the book is named after her, and a lot of references to how she accomplished it are in the book. It's kind of a special dedication to so many women and women of color who have accomplished so much over the years. There's so many of them that never really were properly recognized. And the importance of it is the role models that we have are so important for the youngsters, and we're just beginning to recognize these role models and make them known. And without that, who is going to inspire the next generation or 2 generations? So it's such an important thing.
You are certainly working hard to encourage young people to use their education, especially in STEM, for the purposes of environmental awareness and problem solving. Have you seen the educational systems adopt more STEM programs?
It's hit and miss in so many. STEM in education is really new. I mean, it's really only the last 10 years in, say, elementary and middle school. Something in the environment that needs fixing if we're running out of something, or if something is causing landfills to overflow, or something's causing something to get into the oceans, such as plastics, which is such a big topic these days. There's so much plastic getting into the ocean. What is the problem first? So teaching them that, and then the steps of the design process, the engineering design process. What is the problem? How to address, brainstorming solutions to the problem, how to work in a team environment, because nobody's doing it by themselves. I mean, we're not solving any problems individually. We're doing it in a team. And actually, Dr. Gladys West was part of a team. She didn't do it on her own, believe me, but she led the team. And teaching students these skills and emphasizing these real-world problems, which is all about what STEM is so important, and doing it at a young age.
And with people like you, we're going to see a lot more STEM education. How can STEM education help in fixing our environmental problems?
That's a great question. STEM education is a way of thinking much more than a subject. Problem solving, hands-on activities, real-world problems. To teach students how to think critically, how to solve problems, how to recognize problems.
There's a lot to be done. Is STEM education also encouraging people to look at their natural environment and preserve and protect ecosystems and wildlife?
It's a huge part of science, which is a huge part of STEM, and we need to expose students to these outdoor situations. I went with our school to the spring science camping trip, and it was such an incredible experience to do that. And students were so motivated when they see it in front of them.
Are we finding that school districts are supporting STEM education?
School districts are supporting STEM education, but there is a gap a lot in the training that teachers are getting and actually integrating it into the subjects as opposed to just a STEM class. And that's the key to really improving, is more training for teachers and a more of a standardized, because it is so new.
I want to thank you so very much for your work in this area. Thank you for being my guest.
Thank you so much for having me.
I have been speaking with Dr. Chris Goldberg, who is a student teacher, coach, supervisor at Temple University's Education Department. I'm Nancy Perlman. Thank you very much for joining us, and do tune in again next week.
If you would like free information about these environmental issues, go to www.ecoprojects.org or call 310-559-9160. Environmental Directions with your host, Nancy Perlman, is a community affairs program of the nonprofit organization Educational Communications and this station.